There comes a moment when everything you once trusted begins to fall apart. Friendships fade, opportunities vanish, and doors that once opened easily now slam shut. It is in these moments of confusion that fear whispers, "You are losing everything." But Alan Watts taught that life is a masterful current, and when the river redirects, it is never without purpose. What appears to be loss is often the clearing of clutter, making room for what must arrive next. Just as a forest fire clears dead branches to let the new roots breathe, your soul is being prepared for a season it could never reach while holding on to what has expired. It is easy to mistake the collapse of old structures for punishment, but Watts would ask, who were you before you learned to fear change? The universe does not take to harm you. It removes to align you. The endings you resist are often the exact beginnings you prayed for, disguised in a form the rational mind cannot understand. When you loosen your grip on the past, you discover that the divine hand was guiding you toward a wider horizon all along. Every closed door becomes a whisper, not here, not anymore, because something greater is calling your name. Imagine, for a moment, standing on the edge of a familiar cliff. Behind you lies comfort, but ahead is destiny. Most refuse to leap because they cannot see the ground. But Watts insisted that the leap itself reveals the path. The wings unfold only after you jump. When everything is stripped away, what remains is who you truly are. That raw, unfiltered version of your soul is the exact material God shapes into purpose. You are not losing because you are weak. You are being emptied so you can finally be filled. Life, in its infinite intelligence, removes what you've outgrown long before you have the courage to release it. The relationships that fall apart, the plans that crumble, the dreams that dissolve, they are all part of a cosmic pruning. Watts would say that trying to cling to what is leaving is like holding water in clenched fists. The tighter you grasp, the faster it escapes. But open your hands, and life will flow into them with grace. Trust is not about understanding the storm. It is about knowing the sky remains untouched. So when you feel everything slipping through your fingers, take a breath and remember, you are not being emptied to be left hollow. You are being clear to be made ready. The divine does not take what belongs to your future. It removes only what cannot follow you into your next season. And when the dust settles, you will see that nothing real was lost. Only illusions that once blocked the light, now shining directly on your path. When life begins to strip away what you once held dear, it's natural to feel abandoned by purpose. But Alan Watts often reminded us that existence is not random. It is rhythmic. What appears to be chaos is sometimes only the shedding of a skin that no longer fits. Like a snake outgrowing its scales, your soul cannot expand while wrapped in the confines of old identities. The universe removes, disrupts, and dismantles to create pressure, and under that pressure, transformation becomes inevitable. Losing everything is not the end of the story. It is the turning of the page, the silence before a new chapter begins. Watts explained that resistance to change stems from the illusion of control. We assume that what we possess today is meant to last forever, but permanence is not the nature of life. Everything in the universe dances in impermanence. Stars burn out, waves crash, seasons shift. When something leaves your life, it is not unnatural. It is alignment in motion. Instead of clinging to what falls away, Watts would encourage you to flow with the current. After all, the river does not mourn the stones it passes. It simply continues onward. This letting go is uncomfortable because the ego believes safety exists in repetition. But comfort is often the cage disguised as shelter. The universe knows when you have outgrown certain relationships, beliefs, and environments, even if your mind does not. Sometimes, what you lose is the very weight that prevented you from rising. When life clears your path, it is not asking you to suffer. It is inviting you to expand. The emptiness you feel is not absence. It is space being prepared for arrival. And while the heart may ache for what is gone, Watts would say that grief is the echo of attachment, not the reflection of truth. The truth is that nothing real can be destroyed. It can only change form. People may leave, opportunities may vanish, but the essence that once nourished you transforms into something new. This cycle of dissolution and rebirth is not a punishment. It is the very fabric of growth. When you embrace it, you no longer fear endings, because you understand they are preludes to beginnings. So, when you find yourself standing in the ruins of old foundations, do not curse the collapse. Step closer. Look deeper. The rubble beneath your feet is fertile soil. Every system must crumble before a new one rises. The universe isn't asking you to rebuild what was. It's asking you to trust what could be. And in that trust, you begin to see loss not as theft, but as liberation. Consider the trees in autumn, surrendering their leaves without resistance. If they clung to what once nourished them, they would never survive winter. Watts used nature to mirror our own transitions, reminding us that what leaves our life is not meant to stay through every season. When something falls away, it is often a sign that another version of yourself is emerging. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. And preparation often feels like deprivation until perspective catches up. Yet the human mind, built upon stories of comfort, fears the void. The space where something used to be becomes frightening. But Watts insisted that emptiness is not a flaw. It is potential. The silence between musical notes is what makes the melody beautiful. Likewise, the gap created by loss is where the next miracle finds room to land. Without this opening, there would be no place for destiny to enter. The universe doesn't operate on scarcity, only on sequence. Many people try to rebuild old structures instead of allowing new architecture to emerge. But Watts warned that repetition leads to spiritual stagnation. To cling to the known is to deny the call of the unknown, where growth awaits. When the universe clears your path, it isn't asking you to run backward, it's guiding you forward. You cannot step into the next season with the weight of the last clinging to your shoulders. Some doors must close, not because they are cursed, but because you are meant to walk through a different gate. And as the process unfolds, you may feel lost, as if the map has been erased. But that uncertainty is sacred. Watts called it the fertile void, a space where creativity begins. When you stop clinging to familiarity, you awaken a deeper intelligence within. You become curious, open, alive. The dismantling of your old life activates dormant potential you never knew existed. What you thought was the end becomes the terrain where your soul learns to run. So do not fear the unraveling. Behind every loss, the universe is whispering, you are ready. Ready to shed, ready to rise, ready to become. And just as dawn follows the longest night, your next season waits patiently for the moment you stop mourning what is gone and begin trusting what is on the way. Alan Watts often described life as a grand play, where scenes shift and roles change, not because something has gone wrong, but because the story must evolve. Losing what once mattered can feel like the lights going dark, but darkness is what allows the next scene to be set. When relationships dissolve or dreams collapse, it's easy to see only the emptiness left behind. Yet Watts would remind you that the stage must be cleared before a new act can begin. What leaves your life is not an accident. It is choreography. And in that choreography, there is wisdom far beyond what the mind can grasp. This wisdom becomes clearer when you recognize that clinging is the true source of suffering. The ego grasps desperately for stability, but stability is an illusion. Everything in existence vibrates with change. When you hold too tightly to what life is trying to release, you create friction, and friction creates pain. Watts compared this resistance to rowing against the current. The more force you apply, the more exhausted you become. But the moment you surrender to the flow, the river carries you effortlessly to where you are meant to be. Surrender, however, is not passive. It is the courage to say, I trust what I cannot see. That trust opens your inner world like a flower turning toward the sun. Suddenly, instead of loss, you begin to feel spaciousness. Instead of fear, you feel curiosity. A subtle shift occurs. You stop asking why something left and begin wondering what its absence will reveal. And in that wondering, you step into alignment. Because life cannot fill hands that refuse to let go. You must open your palms if you wish to receive what is next. In moments of transition, silence becomes your greatest teacher. When everything external collapses, you are invited inward, to the quiet chamber of your soul where truth resides. What's believed that silence is not empty. It is full of answers that words cannot capture. Sit with your losses. Do not rush to patch the wound. Let the echoes and the emptiness speak. They will tell you what your next season requires. Sometimes, all you must do is listen deeply enough to hear what life has been whispering all along. And then, almost imperceptibly, something shifts. A new path begins to reveal itself. Not with trumpets or spectacle, but with subtle synchronicities. A chance meeting, a sudden idea, a door you never noticed before. That is how the universe guides you. Gently, quietly, constantly. But it can only be heard once the noise of clinging fades. The clearing is the invitation. And when you accept it, you step not into uncertainty, but into possibility. To understand why loss is often the beginning, we must explore how identity forms. What's taught that who you believe yourself to be is a costume stitched together by past experiences. But when life removes pieces of that costume, what remains is not emptiness, it is essence. Without attachments defining you, you rediscover who you were before the world told you who to be. This rediscovery is not comfortable, but it is profoundly awakening. The identity built on possession crumbles to reveal the identity built on being. As the layers fall away, you may feel exposed. Vulnerability rushes in, and vulnerability scares the ego. But what's insisted that vulnerability is the birthplace of authenticity. The soft, unguarded parts of your soul hold the truest version of you. When the world takes from you, it is often removing what blocked you from seeing your own light. Loss carves out space within you, space where humility, clarity, and depth can grow. The path cleared by God is not always external. Sometimes, it is the landscape of your inner world that is being transformed. With this transformation comes an invitation to trust uncertainty. What's said that uncertainty is the very heartbeat of freedom. When you cling to old stories, you imprison yourself in what already exists. But when you surrender to the unknown, you step into infinite potential. This is where miracles are formed. Possibility breathes in the places where certainty dies. And though the mind may tremble, the soul knows. Growth happens at the edges of comfort. You may notice that people who once fit effortlessly into your narrative begin to fade. This is not abandonment. It is alignment. Every soul has a season in your story. When their chapter ends, forcing them to stay only disrupts the rhythm. Letting go honors both journeys. What's compared relationships to dances? Sometimes they end, not because something is wrong, but because the music changes. And when the music changes, you must move with it. In this dance of endings and beginnings, trust becomes your anchor. When the world feels unsteady, trust steadies you. Trust that what leaves clears the way for what arrives. Trust that nothing valuable is stolen, only returned to source. And trust that your next season holds gifts you cannot yet imagine. Because in the cosmic architecture of your destiny, there are no accidents, only arrangements disguised as loss. Alan Watts often spoke about the illusion of separation, the idea that we are isolated beings navigating random suffering. But in truth, you are woven into a vast tapestry of intelligence, where every thread has meaning. When something leaves your life, it is not severance, it is rearrangement. The universe is constantly shifting conditions to align you with your highest expression. What feels like abandonment from a small perspective of the mind is often precision from the wider perspective of the soul. Only when time passes do you realize that what was taken would have limited who you were becoming. This realization deepens your relationship with trust. Trust is not blind optimism. It is the recognition that life has guided you through countless storms before. Watts would say that the universe is not against you. It is you, unfolding from within. The same intelligence that orchestrates seasonal tides and lunar cycles is orchestrating your evolution. Losing something, therefore, is not misfortune but momentum. You are being moved, gently, sometimes forcefully, because stagnation is the true tragedy. As this movement accelerates, your inner landscape begins to shift. Old desires dissolve, old fears resurface, and then soften. You notice yourself craving simplicity, truth, freedom. Watts believed that growth feels like returning home, not to a place, but to a state of being. When attachments fall away, what remains is space. Space for clarity, creativity, and connection. This is not emptiness. It is possibility expanding inside you like a blooming horizon. However, this process often triggers emotional turbulence. The ego fears death, not physical death, but the death of identities it clings to. What would remind you that ego death is not annihilation, it is liberation. When you release outdated versions of yourself, you make room for alignment. The grief you feel is not for what you lost, but for the comfort you must outgrow. Do not confuse discomfort with misalignment. Sometimes discomfort is your soul stretching into its next size. Slowly, an inner shift awakens. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" This shift is your metamorphosis. It marks the moment you stop resisting the current and begin swimming with it. And once you move with life instead of against it, you begin to notice something miraculous. Every closed door was pushing you toward the open one you could not see. To truly step into your next season, Watts emphasized the necessity of releasing the illusion of permanence. We suffer because we imagine life should remain the same. But permanence is found only in change. The moment you accept the fluidity of existence, you unlock a profound sense of peace. Instead of grieving every shift, you begin to expect them. And expectation dissolves fear. In this mindset, you do not panic when things fall apart. You prepare because you know rebuildings are always disguised as endings. This acceptance transforms loss into clarity. You begin to see that what left your life was often something you tolerated rather than celebrated. We cling to familiarity, even when that familiarity drains our vitality. But the universe has no interest in your comfort, only your expansion. Watts believe that comfort zones are spiritual cocoons. They may feel safe, but nothing can grow there. When life shakes you loose, it is because your wings are ready, even if your mind is not. As you navigate this evolution, vulnerability becomes your greatest asset. Vulnerability opens doors that strength alone cannot. It allows you to connect authentically with others, to admit what hurts, and to receive support. Watts often said that vulnerability is not weakness. It is intimacy with existence. When you stop pretending to have everything under control, you become teachable. And the universe loves to teach those who are willing to listen. Gradually, patterns reveal themselves. You notice that every time you lost something important, you gained something essential. The breakup that broke you led to the courage that rebuilt you. The job you outgrew pushed you toward your purpose. The friendships that faded made space for relationships aligned with your soul. Loss becomes a language, and life speaks it fluently. Once you learn to read it, you stop panicking and start appreciating the hidden architecture behind it. And then clarity dawns like sunrise. You realize you were never losing everything. You were losing everything that could not follow you forward. The universe is not cruel. It is surgical. It removes what blocks your growth, cuts away what dims your light, and clears the path for the version of you that was always waiting. Your next season is not built on what you cling to, but on what you courageously release. Alan Watts often emphasized that the essence of transformation lies not in the external rearrangements of your world, but in the internal shifts of your consciousness. When you begin to see life through this lens, loss becomes a mirror rather than a wound. You discover that what leaves your life often exposes the parts of yourself you've ignored. In its absence, hidden fears rise to the surface, but so do hidden strengths. Without these disruptions, you would continue operating on the same frequencies, repeating the same cycles. The universe removes the familiar so you can finally meet the parts of yourself you were destined to become. This inner meeting often begins with solitude. While loneliness feels heavy, Watts taught that solitude is profoundly sacred. It strips away distractions, revealing who you are when no one is watching. In solitude, you learn to generate your own peace rather than depend on external validation. You become attuned to the quiet intelligence within, like listening to your own heartbeat for the first time. And in that silence, you realize something extraordinary. You are never truly alone. The divine sits patiently in the quiet places you fear to enter. As you sit with this awareness, you begin to notice subtle shifts in perception. What once felt like loss now feels like realignment. The people who drifted away no longer carry the same weight. The plans that fell apart lose their power to haunt you. What would say this is because you have stepped out of the illusion of permanence and into the flow of presence. You stop trying to revive what was and start welcoming what is becoming. This mindset doesn't erase grief, but transforms it into gratitude for every ending that carved you into who you are today. Over time, your relationship with uncertainty transforms. Instead of resisting the unknown, you lean into it. What's believed that the unknown is where life truly breathes. Certainty is a closed door. Uncertainty is a doorway. When you release the belief that you must know every outcome, life begins to surprise you in beautiful ways. Coincidences start to align. New opportunities emerge from unexpected corners. The very things you feared losing become the reasons you found yourself. And as this realization settles, a quiet confidence emerges. Not the shallow confidence built on ego, but the deep-rooted assurance built on experience. You trust yourself, not because you control life, but because you have survived enough storms to know you will always rise. In this trust, you become unshakable. The universe cannot take what was never meant for your next season. It only removes what blocks the path you were born to walk. To step into this new season fully, Watts emphasized the necessity of embracing impermanence as sacred, not threatening. Everything is always changing: your body, your thoughts, your relationships. When you accept that nothing here is meant to stay, you stop clinging and start flowing. This flow is not passive. It is participation with the rhythm of existence. What's called it the dance. And in this dance, each loss is a dip, each gain a lift, each pause a breath. Seen this way, life becomes music rather than struggle. This shift in awareness empowers you to let go with grace. You no longer grip people or situations tightly out of fear, but hold them gently out of love. You trust that if something is meant for you, it will remain. And if it leaves, it served its purpose. Watts would say that love does not demand possession. It celebrates presence. When the universe clears your path, it is an act of love, not abandonment. It is guiding you toward alignment, not isolation. In this aligned state, your inner voice grows louder and clearer. That subtle intuition, the whisper beneath the noise, begins to lead your decisions. You feel pulled rather than pushed. Navigating life becomes less about force and more about listening. And the more you listen, the more you notice divine patterns forming in your life. You start to see how every heartbreak built strength, how every loss made space, how every ending pointed you forward. Nothing was wasted. Not one tear, not one fall, not one goodbye. Eventually, a realization dawns quietly but powerfully. You are not losing everything. You are shedding everything that cannot survive in your next season. It's not destruction, it's pruning. It's not punishment, it's preparation. You were never meant to carry old burdens into new blessings. And the moment you stop resisting the clearing, you feel lighter. You breathe easier. You step forward with open hands instead of clenched fists. Finally, when you look back on the path, you'll see the poetic intelligence behind every twist. The universe was not tearing your life apart. It was weaving it tighter. You'll understand that every loss was a compass, every ending a doorway, every breaking a breaking open. And with that understanding, you no longer fear the clearing. You embrace it, because now you know God does not take to diminish you. He takes to expand you, clearing the path not away from your destiny, but directly toward it. There comes a point in every journey when we finally recognize that the things we thought were breaking us were secretly shaping us. As Alan Watts so often suggested, life is not dismantling you out of cruelty, but carving space within you for something far greater than your expectations could imagine. Every loss, every silence, every door that closed was not evidence of abandonment, but a whisper of redirection. When we look back with clearer eyes, we see that the universe was never taking from us. It was clearing the debris so we could walk forward without tripping over what no longer belonged to our path. And with this understanding, the fear of letting go begins to soften. We start to see endings not as failures, but as completions. Seasons change, not because the tree has done anything wrong, but because growth demands transformation. The same is true within us. When life strips away the familiar, it is revealing a version of ourselves we could not reach by clinging to the comfortable. And just as winter never apologizes for the falling leaves, your soul never apologizes for releasing what dims its light. In the quiet of these transitions, something profound awakens, a deeper trust in the unseen. Instead of fighting to control outcomes, we learn to flow with them. Watts taught that the river does not resist the bends in its course. It embraces them, knowing they are part of the way home. The moment you surrender the illusion of control is the moment peace enters. It is then you notice that what left was heavy, what remains is essential, and what is coming will require both hands open and heart uncluttered. So as you step into this next season, carry this truth gently. You are not losing everything. You are losing only what cannot follow you into your purpose. The divine does not clear your road to leave you stranded, but to make space for alignment, opportunity, and growth. Trust the timing of the dismantling, because the architecture of your future depends on its precision. When the dust settles, you will not be smaller for what you have lost. You will be stronger, lighter, and more aligned with who you were always meant to become. If this message resonated with your spirit, if it reminded you of something your soul already knew, share your reflections in the comments below. Your story may be the sign someone else is waiting for. And if you feel called to continue this journey of awakening and alignment, consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. It helps this message reach those walking through their own clearing. After all, no one should step into a new season alone. Let's walk it together.